Hearing about an NGO experimenting in Kenya, that worries me because there's a long history of NGOs wreaking a lot of havoc. I was born and raised in Siaya in Western Kenya, which is not too far from Kogutu. The people in the village are very similar to people I grew up around. They're my uncles, my cousins. I'm a little skeptical of white saviors, with good reason.
What inspired you guys to make the film?
It really started back in like 2017. I read an article in the New York Times by Annie Lowry, and it was about this big experiment happening in Kenya by this organization called Give Directly. And it was really about giving people free money and testing this idea of a universal basic income. And at that time, the article profiled a place, they called it the pilot village, where they had given lump sums of money. They had given $1,000 and just were like, see what happens. And so I got in touch with the organization and Give Directly, and they were like, oh, we're actually about to do this other much bigger thing where we're going to be giving away a UBI for 12 years. And it'll be kind of the biggest and longest experiment that's ever been done in universal basic income. And so it was really kind of through the organization that I first got access. I went to Kenya. I was there when, you know, they arrived in this village called Kogutu that we end up featuring in our film. And they introduced the whole idea. And I started filming with people in the village and really wanted to do in-depth profiles that felt very immersed in their lives. Quickly realized that I was a white lady from the US and had no business doing that on my own, and knew that I needed a collaborator to do this in the way that I wanted. And sort of, you know, heard through the grapevine and really just kind of through the doc community that isn't that large after all, I had heard about Sam Soko and his amazing film Softy. He had just premiered, or was about to premiere actually. And so my partner, Amanda Pollock, and we met with Soko, and through some long conversations, he was very skeptical of the whole thing from the start, which was, oh, I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think he froze, but I'm sure
he'll come back.
Yeah.
Which was, so he was skeptical from the start, which was kind of the baseline that I was as well in many ways, and really wanted, you know, someone who'd be willing to kind of dig further into that skepticism of what this whole thing was about. We had a series of meetings. He went to the village to check it out, and he agreed to come on to the project as a co-director with me.
What do you think are the long-term implications of universal basic income, especially, you know, in Africa? Could it work in Africa? Could it work anywhere, ever?
I mean, I think the short answer is I do think a UBI could work. I think that the bottom line is that we live in a very fiercely capitalistic world. And when you give people money, their lives get better. And I think there's so much like cynicism, I think, around what people will do with that money. When you give, quote unquote, poor people money, are they going to make responsible decisions? And so that's what a lot of this experiment was about, which, you know, frankly, to Soko and I, kind of feels like we need to move past that conversation already. There have been many trials of UBI done, and you see people making good decisions for their families, educating their children. It's kind of like a no-brainer at this point that people are going to do the things that they need to do, and those often involve education, healthcare, simply feeding themselves.
Very interesting. One of the things that I was curious about was, well, I have two parts to this question. One is, how did you choose the participants in the film? But then two, how did you build trust with the people?
So it was very hard because I think at some point we were following, I think 20 families or something. And when just going to the village to film was such a headache because you spend literally a day or a day and or half a day with each family, and easily you can be there for 2 weeks.
The reality of it was I was like crazy filming with all these different people because I like didn't want to miss anything. And I was like driving us crazy with following 20 different families. And Soko was finally like, we need to pick a lane. Like, let's pick the people that this film is about and focus on them. And so that was a very good turning point for us.
And we kind of gravitated particularly to the younger group or the younger generation, because they kind of was 16 when the experiment was happening, or just turned 18. And we were thinking, even if we were following this, in this case we did for 5 years, is by 5 years there's a lot of transitions that would have happened in their lives, or a lot of questions, which I think we felt could resonate or might resonate with audiences globally. And we kind of picked that lane and see how that looks like. And I think in building trust it's a level of understanding of the culture, the people, and how they relate. Something as simple as, which is a top tip as well, is whenever you're going to any one of the homes, the villages, this is, spend your first days, moments, just spending time talking, understanding. So you kind of understand where both of you are coming from, and where what you are trying to do and how you're trying to do it, and don't take for granted to just repeat why you're doing this and why it's important in that conversation.
You have received Kenya shillings 2,280 shillings.
Kenya Limited.
Segovia.
What are some of the ways the film impacted the people of Kogutu, if you will?
I think on a very positive level, it's captured some level of history for them, which I'd say is lacking not only in Kogutu and just in general as an African society. Like, there's so much we lose by not capturing such fundamental moments in a very creative documentary kind of way. Because this would probably have been a report or some set of photographs that you would see, and it would be person A, person B, person C, person D. I think in this case, probably I'd say the most powerful way I've seen it's impacted them is, and I'm saying this because we took the film to the village, invited them, we had the whole village come out to watch the film, and it was crazy to just watch them excited to see themselves on screen, and even forgetting, that, oh my God, that's 5 years ago, and even them just embracing, because there are people we filmed who have passed away, and when they're watching them and they're like, oh my God, this is symbolic for us in our village, that you got this person, and they've, that moment in time is captured, and our story is captured and shared with the world. And for them, it's something powerful, because they never saw themselves as people who would have something to share that the world would care about. So it makes them, it's something incredible to watch, and I think it really fills me as well.
Very powerful indeed. So lastly, guys, the film is critically acclaimed. I must congratulate you on a fine piece of work. How do you feel about the journey? It took many years. You built this thing. It's now critically acclaimed, meaning it's being accepted. People understand why you did it. As a creator or as an artist, that must feel great, right? So tell me about how you feel about the fact that the film is critically acclaimed and it's coming out on Netflix, or it's released on Netflix. How do you feel about that?
It feels thrilling. I mean, we worked on this thing for a very long time, and it was such an uphill battle in so many ways. So, all we ever wanted was for it to reach audiences and for people to talk about it. We really made this film. It's sort of I have to say, it's a complex film. There's a lot of gray area in it that we go into, I think, on whether, we're talking about UBI, whether we're talking about aid organizations and kind of white saviors in Africa. And so I think that there's a lot for people to debate and for them to kind of find themselves on different sides of the spectrum on and really have a good conversation about. And so we are feeling like that's happening. And so that's really validating because, yeah, that's all we ever hoped for. I think it's also kind of made us realize that there's still a lot to talk about. So we are having talks amongst ourselves about potentially a follow-up and maybe looking at UBI and kind of some different ways around the world, continuing to follow up with the village is one possibility. So I feel like this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg for us. And we definitely want to continue collaborating together as co-directors. So hopefully more to come.
It's released on Netflix Africa. It's available across the continent. Make sure you catch it, make sure you watch it, and make sure you reach out and tell us what you think.
Amazing. The film is Free Money. It's available on Netflix Africa right now. It's amazing. It's critically acclaimed. I loved it. I'm going to watch it again with my family. And I can't wait for whatever you guys make next.
Nyaka seche moko iluyo lakini ng'eny bing'en koro wan jomodhier.